Hey friends and book lovers, welcome back. Today's video is my November wrap up. I am sorry that it is so late. There were other circumstances where I just couldn't get this video up fast enough. However, I wanted to do it because better late than never, right? This month I ended up actually reading 6 books. 2 of them were novellas. One was about 100 something pages. The other one was pretty short, only like 20 pages, really quick novella. But that short novella applies to a series I just finished, which I will talk about in this video. And also the other thing I read was a really big omnibus of like the first volume of a manga series that I love. I wasn't expecting to read that, but I got it in the mail as a pre-order and I was just so excited that I had to reread it, and it's still just as good. And though I'm further on in the manga now, I still love it. And I feel like a lot of people that have started reading it because of the fact that it's coming physically have also really loved it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Right, the first thing I'm going to mention, because I'm finally so happy to be finished with this, is the Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This is the unabridged version, so it was like 1,200 pages or something crazy like that. I finished this up with the audiobook, which was really helpful because it gave me an option to audio read. I usually don't read audiobooks that much just because I prefer physically reading or reading on my Kindle, but audiobook came in handy for this one since this is kind of hard to read. It's a huge tome, but also I was able to read this on trips that I was taking and then on my commute to work when I would go into work, and that really helped me out with this one. I enjoyed this. I don't know if I rated it, and I'm not sure how much I'll rate it. Because it's the unabridged version, it does have like a boring kind of middle, and because it was released as a serial during the time that it was being published, it I think reads kind of serialized, where you have like this just longer story that you don't feel it's necessary for the actual Count of Monte Cristo story. And so for that reason, I feel like it's really hard to rate. I will eventually reread the Count of Monte Cristo because I really did love it. It's just so good. But I think I'm going to go with the abridged version just to cut out some of the fluff that I didn't really find pertinent to the story and that it just didn't feel like a good use of my reading time. I will say though, I'm happy to have at least read the unabridged version, so I can say, yeah, I've read the whole thing. You know, I'm a purist. I've read all of it. But I won't probably read this again, at least not for a while, unless I'm reading the abridged version. So I love this. Definitely one of my favorite classics, especially the story. It's just so good. The actual Count of Monte Cristo story is so rich and juicy and so well thought out. All the strings come together and it's just like, oh, it's so satisfying. It's definitely different than the movie, though I actually want to rewatch the movie maybe tonight because it's so good. Oh, it's such a good movie. And though it's not the same as the movie, this book is still really good and I highly recommend if you're looking for a classic to read the Count of Monte Cristo. You don't need to read the unabridged version like I did, but definitely pick up the abridged version. You won't be sorry. The novella that I read was Bittersweet Love by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is a prequel to one of her series. I think the first one is called White Hot Kiss, and it has to do with like gargoyles. And I haven't actually read like a fantasy romance series with gargoyles in it, but this will definitely be my first gargoyle-esque series, so I'm intrigued. The prequel was pretty good, and though we won't follow those 2 main characters in the prequel, which I'm kind of sad about because I'm really interested in their story, we will follow a character that we did kind of see a little bit of in her younger years in the prequel. I haven't started White Hot Kiss yet, or that trilogy, just because I feel like I might binge read it if I start it, and I have so many other books to read, but Bittersweet Love was fun. Definitely a cute little intro to the series, and I'm very much looking forward to reading some of Jennifer L. Armentrout's other books other than the Blood and Ash series and the Flesh and Fire series, which are the only ones I've read so far, and seeing if I really do like her writing and her other ideas and concepts in the fantasy romance world. If you've read any of her other series apart from Flesh and Fire and Blood and Ash, let me know. I'd love to hear kind of opinions on it. I'm part of other groups that have read all her series, and people have really great ways of recommending like what books you should read next if you liked X series from her. So that's what I'm doing now, and I'm excited once I finish that trilogy to get to the Harbinger trilogy, which is the spin-off of the one that I'm planning on starting soon. The next one that I read was the manga that I talked about, and this is the Omnibus Volume 1, or maybe an omnibus is just the whole thing. But this is Volume 1 of like a bunch of them. I think it's the first 100 and something episodes of it. and that is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smith. This is the beautiful Illumicrate edition, and it has like the perfectly sprayed like ombre edges that go with the theme of the cover and the back, of course. I love this art. I think I wouldn't be as addicted to this if I didn't love the art, but it's so beautiful, and the story is so cute and wholesome that I think if you just like cute and wholesome mangas with some kind of real world topics, you'll love the Lore Olympus story. It's a fantasy romance. It's a Hades and Persephone retelling, and I think right now it's my favorite Hades and Persephone retelling just because it's so cute and so relevant to other difficult world topics that we have to deal with in life. And I just really enjoy it. I love supporting this artist. She's come so far, and I think had she not become a phenomenon, I don't know that she would have gotten like all this crazy like things like getting a physical copy of her book, but she's so talented, and I'm just so happy to own this book and have been part of like her come up journey, or like been reading her since before she got super popular, and now get like the spoils of all of that. So Webtoon is a great app to find manga and comics if you're interested in that, and you can read them on your phone or on your iPad, so they're really easy. And sometimes a series like this one gets popular enough that it becomes a physical series, so it's really great. And just because volume 1 has been released doesn't mean that there aren't further comics in the story. This is only the first 100 and something episodes, but there are a lot more episodes on the app that you can watch, and I think most of them are free. And the only reason that you would pay for it would be if you wanted to read her most current manga episodes, then you would pay. So the 3 most current ones you pay for, but if you wait for them, they become free after a certain amount of time. When I usually catch up to the series, I am constantly paying for the most updated manga episodes, but if I'm not up to date, then I usually just read the free ones until I can catch up. So I feel like that is a really reasonable way to support the artist, but then also get something for free to try out a series, if you will, and then pay for current episodes. I really love Webtoon for that. It's a great app for comics and manga, and this manga is so worth it, and a lot of it is free on that app, even the episodes that are in this book. All right, so the next one is a continuation of a series that I started in October because the last one of this trilogy came out in December, and I'm actually currently reading that right now. Actually, it came out the last day of November, but it feels like it came out in December. Either way, the last one of the trilogy has come out recently, and I'm reading it, and I read the second one in the trilogy, which is Jade War by Monte, and I absolutely loved it. It was super enjoyable. I think I gave this either a 4.5 or a 5 star. I really enjoyed this one. I loved Jade City. I think that's still currently my favorite one of the series, but I also really loved Jade War, and right now I'm reading Jade Legacy, which is the 3rd in this series, and I also received my beautiful Illumicrate editions of this trilogy, and I'm so happy that I bought them even before reading the series itself. I just knew I would love it. Well, actually, that's a lie. I wasn't sure I would love it, but I knew that even if I didn't love it, I could at least gift that series to someone who did really love it. So I got them anyway. And Jade War was incredible. If you read this series, then you know there's not much that I can say about the second one without spoiling for the first one, but this was a strong sequel. I was really compelled to read it, and I read it really, really quickly because it was such a strong sequel, and now I'm reading the 3rd one, which is hurting me in my feelings. However, it's still a strong book, and I actually don't know how it will end, and it's just throwing me for a loop. This one was a wild, wild ride, and the 3rd one, Jade Legacy, is proving to be an even wilder ride, and I'm just loving Fondley's ideas, and I probably will buy the next book that she comes out with because she's crazy, but like in the best author crazy kind of way, and I am loving it. All right, the next one is the last book in a trilogy that I read, plus the novella that you, I guess, are told to read after you finish the series before you go into the next trilogy in the world, and that would be The Hero of Ages. And I read 11th Metal, which is part of Arcanum Unbounded by Brandon Sanderson. This is just a collection of all of the short stories that he's ever written up until now, and 11th Metal is in that, so I count it as its own novella because it is its own like novella and story, so you could purchase it separately. And you could read the 11th Metal after Final Empire, which is the first one of the series, but I read it as the last book after Hero of Ages just because I just wanted to do it that way. But you could technically read it after you read Final Empire. You could maybe even read it as a prequel because it is a prequel story, but I didn't, and I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend you reading Final Empire and then reading 11th Metal. But I read 11th Metal, and it was good. It was an okay type of story about a character's background. I didn't find it to be super interesting or super important to the story, but I think if you just want a little more of that world and of the characters, it's a good one to read. It gives you some kind of emotional understanding, but not a complete amount that I felt like, oh, if I haven't read this, I wouldn't understand the characters' backgrounds or way of feeling or way of thinking. So it's okay. I gave it like a 3 stars. It was an okay story. It was easy to read, and I felt like, okay, now I've read Era 1 completely. And then of course I finished Hero of Ages. Is this backwards? It is backwards, and it was good. It's still a strong conclusion. The last part of this book is really interesting. It gets to everything, and everything is like woven together, and everything is kind of closed out, and all the ties are tied. There are no loose ends, if you will. But I didn't like this one as much as the first 2. It was a really interesting ending to the book, but the way that this book started out, the first like 20-25% was a very different tone from the first 2 books. It was a little hopeless. It felt a little grimdark, but it felt out of place because the series isn't a grimdark series, and the first 2 books didn't set that tone. So the tone was off, and the pacing I felt was kind of off in this one, where the first like 30-40% was really slow and really hopeless, and there wasn't like much provided to be compelling. But then the last like 50-60% was just great. It was fun, it was action-packed, there was a lot going on. There was a lot to understand that had been pieced together in the first 2 books that you had to kind of piece the rest together with this book, and there was a lot of interesting intrigue, I guess. The epigraphs are here as well, which I always love the epigraphs that Brandon Sanderson does. They're so interesting, and sometimes I want to read a chapter just to get to the next epigraph, because that was like a more interesting part, at least in the first part of the book. I don't know if I'll do a book chat for this. Let me know if you'd like to see a book chat for Hero of Ages. I did one for Final Empire, and I did one for The Well of Ascension, but I don't know if I'll do a book chat for this. I might do one just because everyone's read it, so it will be a spoilery one, but I'm not 100% sure. If you'd like to see a book chat and you want to just hear my thoughts on video, let me know in the comments down below, and I will make one. There's a lot of thoughts and opinions on this. I read this one with Andrew from Get Right On In, and he also seemed to be like not the most enthused with this last one, so we kind of fall into the same camp about it, but it was still worth it, and it was still a really great conclusion, at least the last portion of this, to this awesome series. I have read now this series plus Warbreaker from Brandon Sanderson, and I think the next thing I want to get into is the Stormlight Archive series, so stay tuned for The Way of Kings that I'll be reading in, I don't know, maybe January. We'll see. I want to do a vlog for it because I feel like I'm going to have so many thoughts throughout the book, and I'm going to be very like invested in the characters, so I want to do a vlog about Way of Kings. So if you want to see that, let me know. I might do it despite people wanting me or not wanting me to do it, but I would still love to hear your opinions on if you want to see a Way of Kings vlog. I am doing another vlog for an epic series that I'm reading right now, so stay tuned for that one to come out as well. And those are my November wrap-up updates and some other little spoiler teasers that are coming on my channel very soon. If you read any of these books, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, or if you just want to post your opinion down below for some of the books that I read in November, please let me know in the comments down below. I always love hearing from you. And if you like this video, please click that like button. That really does help me out. And if you want to see more content like this and more content from me, please don't hesitate to subscribe.